Hello and welcome to this section. In this section, we will learn the content related to the generated object, which is an effect of a case we will complete today. When I click on a box, it will start a game, and then you need to make a point. Then we can notice that the falling speed of this box is completely different. If I don't point to it, it will pop up such a box, which proves that I have failed. Then I click this score again, and it will disappear. I will remember the same again. If I accidentally point to the white area, but not to the blue area, it will also prompt us to fail. This is an exercise we are going to complete in the classroom today. This game is still very, very fun. Is it a way of playing our fingertip piano instead of pointing white pieces? It will fail again. So let's think about a case like this. Let's first split it into the most basic parts. Let's do the most basic part first. That is, let's let one like us enter into one piece, and it will fall at different speeds. How can we make a production? Let's think about it first. We come to the most basic step on our side. First, it needs to generate an object, right? Since we want to generate our objects, we don't need to generate them through a top-level event. We develop a good habit of generating them directly through our action group. What does the action group often do? It's a package for an event logic, right? For the logic of generating hackers, it must be very complex and often called. Therefore, we will change the name here and call it our generating hackers. What does it need to do when we trigger the logic of generating hackers? First of all, we have done a part of what we know. We actually want to generate hackers. So who can do the action of generating hackers? Can the canvas and all the containers in the canvas be done? So here we choose our canvas to execute? Yes, it's the creation object we just learned. Who's its template? Is that it? We can see a rectangle 1. When I select such a rectangle 1, it has a lot of extra attributes for me to select. What kind of sub-object does it have, and what kind of sub-object does it have compared with the previous one? Let's take a look in the drop-down menu. He has an extra sportswear. What do you mean? When I choose such a motion 1, I can generate not only its objects, but also its sub-objects. But what will happen if I fill it directly now? Whether it will directly carry out an infinite generation in the area of a black block like us, infinite whereabouts, has no meaning. I hope it is sometimes generated in the first region, sometimes in the second region, sometimes in the third region, and sometimes in the fourth region. What should I do? I don't know if any smart students think about it. We seem to have learned a numerical variable before. There is an action in the numerical variable. You can see it. There is an event called generating random integers. If we look at it, the first coordinate is 0. If I copy such a rectangle, I will give it to you. Move right to the second position. It's almost in such a position. What are its coordinates? It's 94, right? If I make another copy and move it to the right, it becomes 188, almost in such a position. Similarly, if I move to the right, it becomes 282. Is this 4 positions? What are the differences between these 4 positions? Is its x-coordinate different? What is its x-coordinate if it is at the first point? Is 0. The second point is 94, the third point is 188, and the last point is 282. Have you found out what such a series of laws are like? Is its law a random number of 94 times 03, which can ensure that it is generated at such 4 positions? So we change the name of such an n to our random location. So what should he do before he executes the generated object? First, it needs to execute a process such as our position and random, and let it generate a random integer. The random integer becomes a random generation between 0 and 3. Since there is position random, we have written out its x-axis. What is its x-axis? It's 94 times a random value of one of our positions. Let's take a look at an event first. Here we add a rectangle to trigger such an action group to try. When we click on such a rectangle, we will let it generate one of our rectangles. When we click on it, we will trigger the generation of an action group such as a hacker. Then we will delete a series of black chrome used for the demonstration here, and let us have a look at the preview. By default, a hacker will come, and I can click again to see another can be seen in this location. Now it can be generated in different locations. So we can generate a random black block event. Is it good? But what are the characteristics of the hackers we generate now? Is the speed completely consistent? And we just saw an effect we ordered here. You can see that the speed here is obviously different, because some are fast and some are slow, and even a pursuit effect can occur. What should we do? If we want to change one of its speeds into random, we know that the position is random, and the speed is random. So let's add another variable here, and here is our speed random. Since that is the case, we can write an event for the following speed. What is the difference content to be modified here? Is it a moving speed? So let's choose a value of our moving speed from the one here. So is it good to generate hackers? Therefore, when it generates a hacker, first it goes to a random location, then goes to a random speed, then creates our object, and then generates a black block through its random location and random speed. Let's see an effect. When I click, I can see that it will be different. There are black blocks to generate, but when we are really playing, it is certainly impossible for us to start. We hope it will automatically trigger this part of logic repeatedly. What should we do? Did we learn a widget before? What is the name of the widget? Our trigger, right? So in this case, we add another trigger, and here we can set an attribute of one of its triggers. First of all, it needs to have an interval of triggering time. Here, we can casually write the interval, such as 0.4 seconds, and then add an event for departure. What is the only one event? What is he going to do when he triggers? Is it right to perform one of our actions to generate a black block? So we move a rectangle here to the bottom and change its name. This is called a start. Similarly, we change its color a little bit more brightly. So when we click on the start, we will generate a black block. The action group does not need to do it. Why? Just change it directly to let our trigger play a playback effect. Then such a trigger period will trigger itself every 0.4 seconds, and then it will trigger us to generate an effect of hackers. Let's have a look. Next, we click again. We can see that every 4 seconds it will help us automatically generate a black block. Okay, then the logic of generating a black block is completed. After the logic of generating a black block is completed, we can complete the next step. For example, there should be at least one scorer on the simplest, so the automatic generation has been completed. Next, let's do the logic of scoring. Here, let's pull a counter and put it here to display a play. What does it look like to score? Is it like this every time we click a black block of, it can make an effect of scoring, so we select a black block like ours. This is, we add an event for it. What do we do when it is clicked? Do we want one of our counters to perform an operation of adding one? What else should we do in addition to adding one? It doesn't matter if we don't know. We can debug it in the reading. When I click, you can see that the trigger is really at home, right? But did we find anything? He didn't disappear. What should we do to make him disappear? Add another event here, and select the current object directly here. What is the current object? It's him, so what does he do if he chooses the current object? Become a removal of the current object, so let's take a look at the preview. Here we click Start again. You can see whether such a hacker disappeared after we click now. But when we found it with eyes, sometimes my top level will not take effect. Why will it take effect? Here I have to tell you some differences in our trigger event. Here we choose click. Do you know what a click is? Click is the mouse press, this lift is called a click, and when we play this game, you can see that if I press, when I lift up, this block has run away, then he has no way to trigger such a click of an event. So here we change one of its trigger events to what? Change to a finger press, so we should pay attention to it. Generally speaking, we use the finger to press such an event when making games. Let's preview it again. You see, the next step is very, very sensitive. When I point my finger, it becomes a technology. Okay, then we have done a good job in such a scoring. At the moment when we have done a good job in scoring, I don't know if you have found a thing, that is, who we added the event to. What is the rectangle added to this rectangle? It is our rectangular template. So when we add an event to the template, these event will be inherited, including adding one to the counter when the finger is pressed and removing the current object when the finger is pressed. This series of event is inherited, so we usually put the template in event to do a good job. Through one of our generated objects, we can all objects are inherited from such a series of event. So now that the scoring conditions are ready, what are we going to do next? Then we are not going to do the failure, so we add another our action group on the canvas and change it into a game failure dot. But you should pay attention to one thing, that is, if I choose this way, it will delete all our start, including the following failure area. So what should we add here? Add a restriction. Since we want to add a restriction, we might as well give it to him when we generate and hold. Let's add a custom ID here. Let's give it a custom ID here. Similarly, when the game fails, why do we use a rectangle whose custom ID is equal to 1, that is, a series of rectangles we all generate? Remove it so that the full screen rectangle disappears. What else? One of our triggers is to make it pause and stop playing, because after all, the game is over, so don't play again, and then what else do you have to do, isn't it? We should also make a display of the following start button. Oh, of course, if you want to show it here, when you click start, we will hide such a rectangle. Let's preview the effect again. Now when I click start, the game can start to play. Okay, then let's think about it. When will the game fail? Here I simply thought of two failure conditions. The first point is that one of its hackers has come to the top, and I still haven't had time to click. Since I hit the bottom, it must be a failure. The second point is that if my hand floats and points to the white area behind, the game should end, right? So we let him touch both of them to finish our game, so the first point is our rectangular template. If we encounter a failure area, what shall we do? To offend one of our game failure of an action. And then there is the appearance of white block. If the white block is a white background, then we will pull one of ours to hold it here. We can set it a little bit larger, 375 times 800, and then change its color to a white. He said that we will pull it to the bottom, and let it be under all the widget. Then, if such a white background is clicked, change its name first. If such a white background is pressed by a finger, does it trigger our game to fail? Let's preview it again. Okay, let's start the game. It can be seen that when we trigger such an action, you will see the game is over. Similarly, if we click to the white bottom, the game is over. There is another point here. Have you noticed that there is no clearance at the end of the game? So if we click to start the game, in addition to clicking to start the game do we want our counter to make an assignment equal to 0, let it have a negative initial value equal to 0. Let's have a preview to see what are the differences in our game. Oh, first of all, we should pay attention to 2 points. At least we need to change a place. What's the first point? This is the pillar. Our failure area cannot be placed here. What should we do if someone else's mobile phone is very, very large, that is, an iPhone 20 user? Therefore, such a residence should not be located in such a position at the beginning, that is, such a failure area. Its y-axis should be dynamic, so what should we do? Is it possible for us to set a y-axis of a failure area when we make the page display? So let's set a property here. What is its y? It is a height of our window. The height of the window is in the height of one of our application system windows. If it looks like this, it will always be at the bottom of our window. Let's have a look at it again. You can see that it will run to the bottom of our window. Is it okay? When it ran to the bottom of our window, it naturally ended the game. So the same kind of white diome can also be set for it. We can also set one of its height on the white bottom. We can also set one of its height on the white bottom as the window height of the application system, so the white bottom is also at the bottom of the whole system. Yes, let's take another look. We can see that the white background is at the bottom now. Yes, now the whole game can go on completely normally, but what's the appearance of a little fly in the ointment? When we initialize, a K block will automatically fall here. How can we solve such a problem? In fact, it's very easy to solve this problem. Generally speaking, we don't have to locate the first template here. Let's take the simplest example. Can I change it to A200? Yes, it automatically 200 falls from the left without triggering our time limit condition. What else will it do? Is how we generate objects when we generate them. When we generated the hacker, did we set up a new x-axis for him? Therefore, as far as the default 200 is concerned, it will not have any impact on us to create objects. Let's take another look. We can see that now we click another game to start, and then it starts to generate our black blocks freely. Then when I click, the game is over. In the same way, we can play again. In this way, we can click on a single white block to generate an object application. Is it all finished? Here we will take you to have a simple review. Then the second point is that we use a series of differences in the creation of objects. Generally speaking, when we create an object for a copy, or when we create an object, we first make a template object, and then when the template object uses an action group such as our creation object, we set a difference value here. It has a location difference and a speed difference, so we make it random at the location, and then the speed is random, and then we create a series of objects. This generates a whole series of black blocks of an action. I use an action group to package it, because it is also very easy to maintain, in case that even the hacker has a new one in the future. The position of the condition is used to perceive the action group. Then, because it needs to be generated in batch, what do I use? I use triggers to trigger. I am free to adjust the transceiver property. For example, when the game reaches 200 points, the difficulty will increase and become more intensive. I only need to modify a time interval of our departure period to increase the difficulty. Then when I click an event, I will trigger one of such triggers to start playing. We will keep generating our hackers. Next, we also learned an overlapping event, that is, if it overlaps with our failure, we will trigger an action group such as game failure. Then, when the game fails to trigger, we use an operation to select multiple objects and select a rectangle in our canvas. You can see what the object type on my side is. It is a rectangle. Therefore, when the rectangle in this rectangle meets our user-defined condition 1 is equal to 1, he will remove this object. Then next, I'm going to pause the trigger, and then let's start such a red block for a display. Then finally, there is another point, that is, a series of events on our side. We try to press down with our fingers to make a production instead of using our clicks. Because one of the top conditions in our canvas, ER, is very, very few. Then I will tell you that the beginning and the end of the overlap are very few. We also use these two event very little. This is just to facilitate the experience of a game. We use such event. In more cases, we still use the beginning touch collision and end collision, these two event. We will give you a detailed explanation of this thing in the follow-up courses and start to overlap. We will try to use this event as little as possible. Finally, we also used some of our dynamic settings during initialization, which is also convenient for us to make some adaptation. And adaptive is to make a dynamic assignment for a window height of y-axis, or a height of our white background, which completes a production of our whole application. This application involves a lot of advanced knowledge and our new knowledge. Therefore, it is necessary to have a complete exercise in the big housework. If you don't have a complete exercise in this application, you can't keep up with a series of more complex application to create objects. Therefore, this application should be seriously carried out one complete. That's all the content of this section. Thank you for watching.